This is the plaintiff, William Niebling. He says he brought his boat into the defendant's marina for some repairs, and the guy made the repairs without going over them first with him, and he was forced to pay the exorbitant bill of $6,000 to get his boat back. He feels he was grossly overcharged. The defendant's business practices are illegal, and he's here suing him for $4,000, the amount of the overcharge. This is the defendant, Ray Reichel. He says the plaintiff brought him the boat to be winterized and to also check out one of the motors which wasn't running. He told the guy he'd have to take the motor apart to see what the problem was, and the plaintiff agreed. He went ahead and did the repairs as discussed. Then the guy tried to dispute the bill with his American Express card. They denied his unauthorized work claim. The crazy man's now coming after him for a refund, and he thinks the judge will see this for what it is, an attempted shakedown. He's accused of being all wet over a bill.
All parties, please raise your right hands. Be seated. Come to order, please. Litigants have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Douglas. William Niebling or Niebling?
Niebling, thank you.
Niebling. You are suing Treasure Island Marina Incorporated, represented here by Ray Reichel. You are the owner, for $4,000 that you believe you overpaid for a boat repair. Talk to me.
Okay. Back in 2015, I took my boat from the Hamptons and brought it to Massapequa. I have a marina there that we keep it in, but there's no dry dock storage available. So in October of 2015, I contracted with his company to keep the boat there for winter storage. There was nothing wrong.
Keep the boat where?
Treasure Island Marina.
Okay.
For winter storage.
And that's in what city?
It's in Seaford.
Okay. For winter storage, meaning you'd have it there from October to?
Yeah, you know, till the summertime, June. It's high and dry. It's out of the water.
Okay. And?
And there was no problem with the boat at the time, but I had a problem the last time I used the boat. The port engine, it has two engines. So the engine on the port side stalled when I was docking it. It had backfired, but it started right up, pulled it in, not a problem.
What kind of engines are these?
Gas engines.
Okay.
The manufacturer is Crusader.
Yes, the manufacturer.
Is Crusader.
And you have two of them on the boat?
Yeah, there's a starboard engine and a port engine.
Okay, so go ahead.
When I went to take the boat, which is Thanksgiving weekend, the port engine would not start. So I took the boat over on one engine to the marina. I said, there's a problem with the port engine. Could you please take a look at it and give me an estimate?
Okay.
Okay. I said, but the engines, I do know the risers need to be changed, parts on both engines. So, I knew it was time. Those parts were old and they needed to be changed on both engines, but he had to see what was wrong with the port engine, and he needed to take it apart to see what the damage was. So, okay, I understand that. He'd call me and let me know, no problem. He called me a couple weeks later, this is now December, said, I got the engine running. There was water in it. He got the water out, he changed plugs, he got the engine running and fogged it out, winterized it, and but he didn't have the time to really look at the engine. It would have to come all apart. That seemed fair to me. I said, okay. So now we're into January. I got a bill from Treasure Island, which was a fine bill. And I called and said, what's the status?
Wait, you got a bill from them for what?
For the winter storage and plus the work he did.
Okay, but when do you first get an inkling that you're going to get smacked with a big bill?
June, when I pick up the boat and I almost fall off.
Okay, you tell me your side of this.
I had spoken to him about the damage. Well, after we started the initial repair, I told him that the cylinder heads had come back from the machine shop. We were going to put those on and we were going to try to complete the rest of the work while the boat was still on land and shrink wrapped. But due to the fact that some of the components are pretty heavy, you're going up and down a ladder, and it's problematic to do it on land. When I saw him in the springtime, I mentioned to him that he should get his work done. We'll put the boat in the water.
What's his work?
Cleaning it and detailing, compound and waxing and things like that.
All right.
So after he completed detailing his boat, we painted...
In June?
In June. We painted the bottom. We put it in the water. That week, I finished the balance of the repairs.
Okay, hold on. Okay. When you say you finished the balance of the repairs, it's not like a little balance. It's
No, we had done part of the work while it was on land, but I still had to put the
Isn't he asking for an estimate at any point?
He had never at any point
Okay,
asked
but
me
why
for a
aren't you
written
giving him
estimate.
one?
Excuse me?
Why aren't you giving him one?
I told he asked me approximately what do the cylinder heads cost, and I said, well, if I have to replace the heads, they're $900 a piece. If I can get them remanufactured, they're normally about $300, $350, $400 a piece.
And how many are there?
2.
Okay, but $600 or $1,800 is a far cry from $6,000. How much do the motors, if you were to buy those new, what do they cost?
$12,000.
$12,000?
$12,000.
Okay, you were trying to argue to me, because I imagine by virtue of an email that you asked me to, that you sent into evidence, that they cost
I have.
$2,900?
Yeah, I have in.
Okay, show me what you want me to look at to believe that.
Yeah, okay. Well, the 2,900 is a quote right here.
A quote for that class motor?
Yeah.
That brand?
It is.
That size?
It is.
Because that's not what I noticed in the language of the quote.
Okay.
It just says marine-based motor.
Yeah, marine-based.
There are motors, and there are motors, right?
Right.
Am I wrong?
No,
But there's also just
you're
a
not wrong.
part, and there's labor to remove an engine.
Yeah, I know.
And
These fine folks are telling you that they will sell you a motor.
A base motor that needs, on this quote, that also needs, like, my water's freshwater cooled. None of that equipment would be included in it. This is the base engine.
Yeah, I know. And it's not even telling me what, I don't understand why there's not a brand on that for that quote. Are you trying to get it as low as possible?
No. Yeah, well.
Yeah, I know. But see, then you throw me off, and then I feel like I can't trust you. All right, but what proof do you have that the new engine would be $12,000? You didn't know I was going to ask you. All right. So what was the deal? You're just used to customers who just pay the bill afterwards and don't ask questions during? Like what?
Welcome back to the People's Court. Harvey Levin here. So, who is more at fault when you don't have an estimate like this? Is it the customer or is it the business person?
The business guy, because there's a reasonable amount that should go to repair. It shouldn't be exorbitant.
Yeah, but that doesn't go to being dumb and not getting an estimate before the work is done. Who's more at fault for not getting the estimate?
I believe the business owner. He should practice good practices and give him a good estimate and say this is how much it's going to cost.
Okay, but doesn't the customer have some responsibility?
Customer's at fault. He's a sucker.
Okay.
Sucker free.
Sucker free, man. Going inside the courtroom.
Typically, I call the customer and I tell them, listen, this is what it's going to cost to do the cylinder head
So
job.
was there ever a time when you told them it's going to be $6,000?
No.
I know. Well, how do you expect anything but sticker shock then when you present it to
Well,
him?
the whole bill was not $6,000. The repair on the engine was roughly about $4,000, but then he had additional work. When the boat came into me, I couldn't even get the engine running because it was full of salt water. There was water in the oil, and it took me 4 hours to get the water out of the engine, get the engine so I could preserve it, so we didn't have to replace the entire engine. So I did that. Then we took the engine apart, and we did the repair work on it, but I never could run the engine long enough to find out if there was any other issues with it because just couldn't physically do it. The motor would not run it. It was blowing out through, compression out the intake because the valves were hung up and or frozen because the salt water was in there. So after I put heads back on it, then I find out if there's anything else I have to address. After I put the heads on it, we went to run the engine, and there's part of the valve train called lifters. 3 of the lifters would not come up. They wouldn't pump up oil, at which point I have to take the intake manifold back off, replace those lifters, start the motor up again, and make sure everything is okay, which we did. Now the engine is running fine, but it's not cooling. Again, I couldn't tell if it was cooling because I couldn't run it long enough when the boat first got to me. So we had to take a seawater pump off, replace an impeller in the seawater pump, and get the engine to cool. Now it's running correctly. Then after I did all of this other work, he came into the office. I gave him the bill. He requested that if he pays cash, can I avoid the tax? Can he avoid the tax? And I told him, no, I don't do business that way. But then he asked me if I could replace the risers on the starboard motor at that point. So
Did you ask him if he could replace the risers on the starboard motor?
Yeah, we agreed in the beginning. All this trouble was caused by something called risers. They clogged. Is that correct?
So you asked him to do more work?
That is accurate. After the bill, I had $5,000 in change, and I have it on an Excel sheet here if you want to look at it, on one engine, and the other engine is going to have the same problem unless what caused the problem is addressed. These things called risers.
No, I understand, but
Right,
if you're
so I
so
said-
horrified at being ripped off, why do you hire him again? How long have you been in business?
I've been at this facility for 30 years. I've been doing this for 45.
Have you ever been sued before?
No.
Is it your testimony that when you would talk to him, you would say to him, he wouldn't ask you how much it's going to be?
Never asked me for a written estimate.
You would just tell him it's going to be, I have to do this, I have to do that, and then we have to see.
If he was adamant about getting a written estimate, first of all, I would have said, okay, no problem, I'll write everything up and I'll write down every stipulation that there possibly could be on it. But he never did that.
Do you have any evidence from another mechanic to say that what he charged was outrageous? See, here's the risk you run when you do not have a contract with someone. And by contract, usually people in your industry will have an estimate that is approved, okay? And that you can prove was approved. So when you don't have that, the risk that you run is that I might find your charges outrageous. But he doesn't run that risk unless you're going to bring me evidence that the charges were outrageous. See, I don't have this problem because I don't let somebody touch it until they give me a price. See, that's the difference between you and I. But you are my husband.
Okay.
My husband asks questions later instead of before. My husband will come in, so I'll get a bill and I'll say, how did this happen? Well, I don't know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. That's what he'll always say because he doesn't care. So some people care and some people don't care. So it's not that outrageous if you have a guy working on it and you don't know how much it's going to be until the work is done that you didn't get an estimate. Maybe you are my husband. And you don't really care about the estimate unless all of a sudden it knocks you out with a left hook. Then all of a sudden now we care. I get it. But, I insisted on an estimate. I don't think you did.
I did.
I don't think you did, because an insister is the kind of person who doesn't let the work get done until there's an estimate. I think that you just thought it would be less, and then now here we are. So now what I have to see from you, because I don't know, these marine repairs are super expensive. So what I have to see from you is that another mechanic looks at this and says this is outside the industry norm. The only thing you have shown me is a base generic, I don't know what, in an email that has none of the other stuff that he did.
Yeah.
Right. See my pickle? You have the burden as the plaintiff when you come in here to show me that you are being, not that you agreed to something that was too high and now regret it, but that there was no agreement on an amount and that it turns out to be too high. I find that there was no agreement on an amount because it's clear that neither did you require any, approval, nor did you, frankly, stop work from happening without knowing a price. So now my job as the judge is to decide what the fair market value of these services and parts are. And he says it's X, and it's up to you to prove it's not X. You have not proved that what he's charging is too much because you have zero proof to contradict what he's charging. Period. Verdict for the defendant. Next time, get the price in writing.
So once again, evidence becomes the critical factor here in the People's Court.
How are you doing?
Sir, you just didn't have it. You put the judge in a pickle, as she said,
Yeah, well, I have plenty of things that show that he actually overcharged me. But
not enough to convince her. Well, you can say you have a lot, but it wasn't what she needed. Yes. All right? Well, listen, you still have the boat?
Yes.
You're going to enjoy it again?
I guess so.
Hopefully?
Yeah.
All right. Congratulations. Thank you very, very much. Now, Mr. Ruckel, if you'll step out here. Obviously, I think you probably learned something here today as well, right?
Well, I have to learn to know my customers a little better. This was a gentleman who came in for the first time. And
okay.
Most of my customers, they trust me,
Anything like this happened in the 45 years you've been doing this?
Nothing ever like this ever happened to me before.
Well, let's hope it doesn't happen again.
You're not kidding.
Congratulations.
Hard enough doing business without this stuff going on.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So once again, evidence. Everybody needs it, right, Harvey?
Evidence is everything, Doug. Here's the thing. When you take a boat, a car, anything like that to get repaired, I am telling you, not only get an estimate, but make sure in writing it says that any additional cost has to be approved by you.